Welcome to She Rebel Radio, the podcast for high-performing women leaders who want to unlearn conventional rules, leave prestigious careers, and launch businesses of significance. Each week, She Rebel Radio brings you insights and advice from women entrepreneurs who transformed their prestige prisons into daring entrepreneurial success stories. Now, here is your host, Lulu Minns.
Welcome to episode 41 of She Rebel Radio, 5 Secrets to Becoming a Kick-Ass Webinar Host. Welcome. It is She Rebel Friday, and I'm really looking forward to sharing with you some secrets around creating webinars. It's something that I have been doing over the past month to serve at a time of crisis in the pandemic. And actually, I was, even before lockdown, extended lockdown in the UK, worldwide, at the beginning of the year, I was at a retreat in Mexico. I was working with my coach out there, and this was back in January, had a realization. I was like, why haven't I done a webinar since last June or July? I love doing webinars. So I really set out to create some webinars, had a conversation with a few people that I could collaborate with, and then lo and behold, lockdown happened. So the webinars have been really highly valued, and it's been a real honor to deliver them. So what I wanted to share with you in today's episode of She Rebel Radio is the secrets to creating or to becoming a kick-ass webinar host. And I say that in the English way, kick-ass rather than kick-ass. I was going to almost spell it kick-ass, but I thought, no, let's spell it in a way that sounds a bit cooler, kick-ass webinar host. And I'm going to share with you a little bit about the webinars that we have done, which have been released as special live additional She Rebel Radio podcast episodes. I'm going to share with you some of the amazing comments and feedback that we've had, because I want you to embody and, move into feeling what that would feel like to get that feedback from creating your own webinar. And it doesn't matter if you've never done a webinar before or whether you've done a few and you're wanting to upskill. Either way, to visualize and step into that version of your webinar, of that next version of you, really, of being the kick-ass webinar host that is dying to get out there. So I'm going to share the comments with you. I'm going to talk a little bit about why you might want to create a webinar, what's the benefit of doing so. I'm going to share my 5 secrets with you, and at the end I am going to share with you really the biggest thing that you need to work on to become that kick-ass webinar host. And sometimes the biggest block, it can be the biggest block for women in particular to step into becoming a kick-ass webinar host. So it's going to be a full-packed episode, solo show that I'm sharing with you today. So grab a pen and paper and let's dive in. So you might want to go back to, if you haven't done so already, episode 40 and episode 37 of She Rebel Radio, which are the previous 2 webinars that I've created. Episode 37 being what the pandemic can mean for women in business, where I had was accompanied by our fabulous guest expert Claire Griffiths from the Thrive Effect, and then 2 weeks later hosted the webinar How to Stay Positive and Lead During a Time of Crisis. That is episode 40 of She Rebel Radio. And actually, you've got coming up, We Support Women to Rise in Business, where I'm again teaming up with Claire Griffiths, and also Rise in Brighton, which is a charity supporting people who have experienced domestic violence. We are coming together to deliver a webinar to you on the 28th of April at 7:30 p.m. UK time. So if you're listening to this webinar before then please do sign up. You can find the sign up link at luluminns.com/rise. And if this is way after that date, then no doubt that will be available to you as a podcast episode. So have a look for that. Now, the feedback from this series of webinars, I'm going to share the feedback with you. And as I said, I'm going to share with you the secrets as to how I managed to create that kind of feedback. And I was quite emotional, actually, putting together the content for this webinar. I'm going to go back through all the feedback that came up on social media, in private messages, in client conversations, etc., and share it. I wanted to share it with you, as I said, for not to show off, but to share with you the outcome, the feedback of the webinars, and how I got there is the 5 secrets I'm going to share with you, right? And I want you to feel into that energy of, creating those webinars and having people log on and give you amazing feedback, because it's been really incredible to receive it. And as I said, made me feel really emotional reading it all back and putting it all together. I knew we'd got a lot of great feedback, but yeah, putting it all together, I was like, wow, you pulled this off. You kicked ass. Well done me. Give myself a cheesy pat on the back, but we have to celebrate our successes for sure. So the feedback was along the lines of, it wasn't along the lines, this is the literal language that was used, is brilliant, fantastic, what an empowered space, I'm feeling so energized, how powerful, such a rich dialogue, insightful, inspired, thought-provoking, invaluable, so many ideas, I loved it. I couldn't sleep afterwards. I woke up so motivated. They were from 2 different people, by the way, but either way, it's a good thing, especially as we've been facing so much uncertainty recently, to not be able to sleep because you're excited about the ideas of how you can step up and create change in the world, right? That's a good place to be, rather than the worrying and the anxiety. So as I said, that all made me feel quite emotional, and I wanted to share with you the secrets that enabled me to create content, to get out there and serve, and for you to be able to do that as well. And before we dive into the secrets, a real important question to ask yourself is why would you want to create a webinar anyway, right? We need to look at why you might want to do that and your reason behind it. And there are 3 kind of core areas, and they're all really, really important. And I don't think I've missed any, but if I have, do let me know. Always feel free to let me know anything I've missed. So the first reason might be to serve people, to inspire, to create community, particularly now more than ever, where we are required to be at a distance from one another. Webinars are beautiful and perfect for this, and we don't know how long this is going to go on for. So to serve people, to inspire, to create community is really important. Number 2 is to generate leads for your business and make offers. That's if you run a business, it's really important that you're thinking commercially about that. Number 3 is to build your personal brand, thought leadership, and become known for something. Really, really important. So they're the 3 reasons that I felt were important to share with you, and it's probably each one of those reasons. If you really embed each one of those reasons, it's really, really powerful. So what's the 5 secrets that I'm going to share with you to getting there? And I'm going to keep this super, super simple for you, with some practical tips and then some more personal development tips about you and how it is that you can serve powerfully. So secret number 1 is to create the outline first. To create the outline first, as I said, you might want a pen and paper, write this down. And when I say that, it's looking at the outcome that you're wanting to create, or the 3, when you're creating a webinar, think about 3 outcomes that you want to create for who it is that's going to jump onto the webinar. So title is really, really helpful. I often create podcast episodes and webinars from the title first. That's just the way my mind works. And then the 3 outcomes. So create the outline is essential. And you know what? When I was creating this, I really thought about when I was a court advocate. I was a court advocate for 11 years. And it was always the first question I asked myself when I was delivering in court. What's the outcome that I'm trying to create for my client? Is it that I'm trying to get bail for them? Is it that I'm trying to get a suspended sentence? And this is no different when you're creating a webinar. What is the outcome that I'm trying to create. And a big mistake that I see, which can be a great cause of procrastination as well, is trying to map out all the content and the detail and the information before really thinking about what is the outcomes that I'm wanting to create, and then picking a title, or as I work, pick a title first and then the 3 outcomes. Then you're ready, ladies, to get it out there. You don't need to pad out all the detail, that comes later. So that's number 1, create the outline first. Number 2 is to create your kick-ass marketing plan. A kick-ass webinar host needs a kick-ass marketing plan. If no one knows about your webinar, no one is going to be on your webinar. So this is about you need around 2 weeks, is looking at and asking yourself, how can I sell the idea? And what's the plan that I'm going to create around it? Again, going back to being a core advocate, I would think about, the outcome, bail, suspended sentence. How was I going to sell that idea to the bench or the judge that was sitting that day? How was I going to sell the idea that my client really deserved to have bail that day? And I would create a plan around that. And this is no different. You are selling an idea. You're asking people whether this is a free webinar or not. So I would certainly suggest you start with a free webinar rather than a paid one. Don't run before you can walk. Is that, I would need to think about how I was promoting the idea of my client having bail, of how I was going to share it, how I was going to collaborate on it and work out the plan, and I would go and speak to probation, see if there's anything they could offer for my client and all of that kind of stuff. And you really need to think about that you are wanting people to give up their time to come on your webinar. You might be asking them to collaborate on your webinar. You might be asking them to share your webinar. So you need to think about out the plan, the marketing plan. A great question to ask yourself is, how many people do I want to show up on this webinar or to sign up? There is a difference between the sign up rate and the show up rate. It's usually around 20-30%. Sometimes higher, particularly at the moment, but it really depends. But it's 20-30%. So you want to get, if you want to get 20 people that are live on your webinar, you want to be signing up at least 60 to 80 people. So you need to get real about the numbers. How many people do I want to sign up or show up on the webinar? And you then need to be really clear about, how am I going to be sharing this with people? Am I going to be doing direct reach outs? Am I going to collaborate with anyone on it or ask other people to share it for me? Am I going to be doing live video? Am I going to be emailing people and asking them either as a bulk, email or individual? Am I going to be, sharing it on my podcast? Whatever it might be. How are you going to be sharing about your webinar? Super, super important. Number 3 is set your intentions. And in brackets, take the afternoon off. Really, really important, so you're in good energy. But set your intentions. And this is really about what you're trying to create, what energy you want to create, what values you are aligning yourself with on the webinar. And how it is that you're actually going to deliver it, as a very general intention that I used to set quite subconsciously, actually, as a court advocate, because I just think it's really helpful to weave this in, because this has been something I've been doing for a long time, is, creating something and then presenting it. Is my intention as a court advocate often, particularly if I was in mitigation of, my client being sentenced, etc., or actually when they were wanting bail, was to humanise my client to the court, to move them away from what the allegation was or what the misdemeanor criminal offence might have been, and really to tie in and humanise my client and turn them into a full human being with reasons and needs and all of that stuff. So that was a very general intention. When you're doing a webinar, it's a much more specific one. So for me, I can't set those intentions when I'm creating that title and those initial outcomes. I lead intuitively. For the most part, it is a gift, and I know I can trust that. So when I kind of feel into the day of like, what are my intentions for tonight? What is it that I'm wanting to bring together? What is it that I'm wanting to create? And if you were on those webinars or you've listened to them, you may not be surprised to hear that my intentions were around creating real empowered conversation with women, a motivational space at a time of adversity. And you can see actually how that connects with the comments that I shared with you at the beginning of this podcast episode. Those comments are no accident. That is exactly what my intention was in terms of what it was that I wanted to create, and why I do that on the day, particularly in the current level of uncertainty and adversity, is like, what do people need right now? They need an empowered space. They need a motivational space. They need to see change and transformation, and is on the other side of this, and that they can be part of that, and all of that stuff. And then that ties into my bigger intention, right, of supporting women to fully self-actualise and rise and step into their purpose and be empowered and own that personal power. So my wider intention is there, but then there's the more, direct intention that as it relates to that particular webinar. So really important work to do. As I said, take the afternoon off, the night before off, if it's a morning webinar, whatever it might be, because that's great time to give yourself the space to think about what your intentions are and feel into what those intentions are. And it really gets you in a really good high energy, because that's what people are there. They're there because they want to connect with your energy, and there's no point in you don't want to be turning up all frazzled, etc., and in a low energetic space if you when you turn up on the webinar, unless that's what your intention is, which is not going to be helpful. So it's really important to be intentional about what it is that you're doing. That is secret number 3. Secret number 4 is to ditch perfection. Ditch the perfection, particularly if this is your first rodeo, ladies. You've got to ditch the perfection. And I said to a client recently who was putting a webinar together, actually, what's the opposite? There's a lot of procrastination going on. What's the opposite of perfection? And we had a good fun conversation. I don't know. And clients often like my feedback and insight, and I wouldn't give that straight away, because it's it's really important to go there. What is the opposite of perfectionism, or being perfection? And the answer I'm going to give it to you here is enthusiasm, passion, knowing that you can make a difference to at least one person. It doesn't actually matter if the 20 people show up, the 50 people show up. It's about making a difference and sharing your passion and your enthusiasm with one person, or 20 or 50 or whatever. And we don't do that by being perfect. In fact, we do that by showing up authentically and being ourselves. And in the last webinar with Alex Bailey, how to stay positive and lead during a time of crisis, not only did Alex share that actually there's a lot of psychological safety around making mistakes and not being perfect right now, but people really need that human connection and that authenticity. So really ditch the perfectionism. You're not helping yourself and you're not helping anybody else. And it's about also why I named this episode 5 Secrets to Becoming, in inverted commas, becoming a kick-ass webinar host. It's not about being an overnight superstar. If you are an overnight superstar webinar host, then that's amazing. Well done. But it's really important to not compare your chapter 1 with someone else's chapter 20, chapter 50, whatever. And that's another reason actually why I tied in today's episode with my background of being an advocate and litigator, because I've used a lot of that skill set in creating this podcast, in creating webinars, etc. And but I also had a shed load to learn as well. So ditch the comparison, ditch the perfectionism, just be enthusiastic and be in your passion. And within that, it's really important to make some key decisions, about if you're trying to be perfect and you're trying to have all the perfect slides and you're trying to be on camera and you're going to have a guest with you and you're going to be like navigating all the tech stuff, and like there is quite a lot to it. And clients that I've had this conversation with have commented, how do you manage all of that? And also, the marketing, that's quite a lot to do. There is a lot to it, So if you don't want to be on camera, for example, because it's your first one, that is totally fine. I've done a number of webinars which are audio only, and that really helps you to be able to focus on your notes. Although I would say don't, sit and read reams and reams of notes. That's super boring. And it kind of ditches your enthusiasm and perfection, and your passion. Definitely chunk your content and have key points that you want to make and talk around it. But if you can't do that and be on camera at the same time, do not be on camera. I am still more than open and happy to do webinars not on camera. Recently, with the recent webinar series that I've done, again, it was part of my intention to create connection. People need to see each other. We were in the lockdown, and that was super important part of what I was trying to create. So it connects back to your intentions. Slides, if you haven't got time, if it's not your zone of genius, etc., don't do them. I rarely do slides. I don't like sitting down and creating slides. It's not really my thing, or getting someone else to do it or whatever, but it's still got to come from me ultimately. So sometimes I do slides, sometimes I don't. And more often my default button is not to do slides. And that's fine. I show up and I focus on the other stuff. And it's about that enthusiasm. It's not about perfection. And no one notices, Number 5 is be the hostess of high degrees. Although, again, even for us women, even the term hostess, you can kind of, see a woman with a tea trolley or something like that. So be the host of high degree. And by that, I mean, you're inviting people to your webinar, to your gathering, to your party, whatever you want to call it. It's yours. You're inviting them. So when they arrive, when they knock on the door, when they ring that Zoom doorbell, you are there to serve. And to do that, you need to take up the space. You need to take up the space, but also hold the space for them to ask questions, if that is something that you've got on your webinar, to put comments in the chat box, to feel included. But that doesn't mean you step back from your power, or you don't take the space and own it when it is yours. And again, when I was a court advocate, when it was my opportunity to speak, I turned up in high degree. I filled the space, I controlled the space, and I would not interrupt, but I remember saying to a probation officer once that they didn't actually have the right of audience to oppose my client's bail application, because the bench had asked them on updates for their reports, for what they were doing or not doing, I might add, on their probation order. The probation officer went in guns blazing with why my client shouldn't have bail. So, it was my, she's trampling on my space. That's my client. That's what I'm there to do. That's what I'm being hired to do. So, I would take up the space, and I bring that to my webinars. It's my party. It's my gathering. I've invited people. The spotlight's on me. So I'm gonna move into that space. And by doing that, you have, as I said, like making those key decisions, you have got to set the expectations for what everybody can expect. Again, I would take you back. We kind of go around 360 to, outlining what's going to happen in the webinar before you dive. That's like topping it before you dive into the content, and then, finishing it off, telling people what to expect, how they can continue something with you or have a call to action, etc. You decide when the Q&A comes in. And the real important part of this, and there's a great book by Prior Parker, which is called it's escaped me. It was on my desk a moment ago. The Art of Gathering is, she says about don't be a chill host, because when you are a chill host and invite people to your party or gathering, you gather people together. and don't show up, and no one really kind of knows where they're there, why they're there, and what the purpose of it is. And I went to a Christmas party actually that wasn't dissimilar to that, of a lot of people kind of being gathered together and not really knowing why they were there, and there was no kind of peak moment of the party, and then everyone leaves a little bit confused, and you don't want people to leave your webinar like that. And Priya Parker explains very well in the book that, if you're a chill host, you create a vacuum, you create space that somebody else will fill. And we've all been at that party, or we've all been on that webinar, or we've all been in that higher education class. I spent 5 years at university, and the teacher or the lecturer, for example, doesn't own their space, and it was usually a mature student who then makes the class all about them and what it is that they want, and everyone has to listen to their questions. It gets very, very boring. So the opposite of that, I love that, don't be a chill host, but me being coach, I wanted to couch that in the positive of be the host of high degree. And again, you just set that intention. It's super, super powerful. So I'm going to run this as a summary for you. Secret number 1, create the outline first and consider what your outcome is going to be. And picking 3 is super powerful. Number 2, create your kick-ass marketing plan. What is the plan? You need to know what it is, and you need to get out there and do it. Number 3 is to set your intentions about what it is that you want to bring and what it is that you're creating. And PS, take the afternoon off, get yourself in good energy. Number 4 is ditch the perfection, be enthusiastic instead, and that really involves some key decisions about simplifying it, ditching the slides, ditching the video, whatever it might be, to make it super, super simple. Number 5, be the host of high degrees, ladies, and I know you have got it in you, so I can't wait to see what it is that you're creating and getting out there into the world. And before I go, I did punish. It's me talking about too much of my background as a criminal defense lawyer. I did promise to share with you what it is. It can be the biggest block for women, but the biggest thing that you need to work on to be a kick-ass webinar host. I always have to pause when I say that, to say it the American way and not the very English kick-ass webinar host, is you need to be in full self-expression of you, which is a journey we can unlock over time. And I tell you what, it gets more and more interesting and exciting, particularly for us as women, when we unlock that journey of full self-expression. There are certain things that need to be in place for us to be in self-expression. And as women, there is that collective, ancestral, and even personal experience of feeling like we should be seen and not heard, of, being told that our voices are shrill, or as Lord Denning so helpfully said, that women's voices do not carry in court, that there can be a lot of fear of having our voices heard and being in full self-expression. And even if you're not in fear, it might be that you know you've got another level of something incredible that you want to be sharing, and you just not being able to unlock that fully. Or it might be that you know what you want to say, but there's fears about showing up and saying it. Or it might be that you have something to say and things that you want to share, and you don't know what that is, and there's a reason for that. And as I said, certain things need to be in place, and that is my 3 keys of self-actualization course. And the last key is self-expression. And I am going to send a strong invitation to you to take a full look at that program, which is 4 weeks. And no matter where you are in your journey, because it's super, super, it's going to be so helpful to you. If you are listening to this, then you want to be a kick-ass webinar host. And this is absolutely essential that you do this work into stepping into the self-actualization, no matter where it is that you are already, because there will always be another level that you can take it to. There will always be potentially a block that you need to unblock, and there's always a new place to go, and that course is really going to support you doing that. So you can find that at that sounded very serious, www.luluminns.com. luluminns.com/3 keys. That's the number 3. So luluminns.com 3 keys. Check that out. It's a 4-week course, only £27. And trust me, along with listening to this episode and doing that work, you are sure to become a kick-ass webinar host. Thank you so much for joining me today. Have an amazing rest of the day, and I will speak to you soon.
Thanks for listening to She Rebel Radio, the podcast for high-performing women leaders who want to unlearn conventional rules, leave prestigious careers, and launch businesses of significance. She Rebel Radio is executive produced and hosted by women's advocate and coach Lulu Minns. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe so you never miss another episode. You can find Lulu Minns on Facebook and LinkedIn at Lulu Minns and on Instagram at LuluMinns_biz. Until next week, keep rebelling against the rules and designing success your way.